Home can be a prison disguised as kindness. Born into slavery yet raised believing she belonged, Jacobs's early life felt like shelter until her mistress died. Sent to Dr. Flint, she met cruelty that stripped away safety and forced fear into every corner of her world. He used words as weapons, teaching a young girl to dread the place she lived. Incidents in the life of a slave girl asks, how does trauma reshape the idea of home? It's a story of survival, the cost of silence, and the fierce courage it takes to reclaim a place called home. Home can be a prison disguised as kindness. Born into slavery yet raised belief.
That was my AI video. It was produced by InVideo. It's my first time making an AI video, and I actually found it really simple to use. I gave it a short summary of the memoir, and then it took it from there based on my thesis. Please be advised that this presentation discusses slavery and abuse. I chose the memoir Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl, written by Harriet Jacobs. My name is Laura Heelan, and I'll be presenting. I'm analyzing the theme of home and trauma theory. What drew me to this memoir is I found it really engaging, and as a high school teacher, I think it would be really important to have it part of the 12th grade curriculum. The interpretive framework is research on trauma theory, specifically the treatment of African American women, slavery, abuse, and what happens to one physically and mentally when you're in a small confined space for years in hiding. The theme of home is brought up a lot. Home's not merely a physical place, but a place where one is loved, cared for, and safe. After Jacobs was 6 years old, she had to go live with Dr. Flint, and there she was no longer loved. And she lived in a house with a man who abused her sexually and emotionally. The personal connection, obviously, I was not around in the South during slavery, and my connection is nowhere near as traumatic and terrible as Jacob's, but the closest I can relate to it is when I first moved out here to Arizona. It was a very sudden, unplanned move. So we had to live with family for a month, and they did not want us there, and so it did not feel like home at the time. And I felt uncomfortable there and unwelcome. How did it help amplify my written work? It started the process of my written work and built the framework on what I would elaborate more on. This memoir should be shared for decades to come, and I really hope that my written work and mini doc does it justice. Here are a few of my secondary sources. One's called Harriet Jacobs' Text of Bodily Repetitions. It's the effects of slavery will forever affect her body and just how traumatized it will be and the self-recovery. Writing the memoir was a difficult task to put into words the trauma. Between the Subline and Traumatic is about what happens, your body's response to trauma. It doesn't fully grasp it until the trauma's done. So she probably had flashbacks, nightmares, and then writing the memoir brought back all these traumatic details and really reminded her how terrible things were for her. Trauma and Resilience in American Indian and African American Southern History. This talks about her quote that says, I prepared for my new home only to be met with cold looks, cold words, and cold treatment. I cried myself to sleep that night, feeling desolate and alone. It explains again that feeling of not being home, even though she's living in a house, and the mistreatment she was given. Contesting post-feminism, feminist address, and relational politics in Harriet Jacobs. The purpose of her narrative is not to attract attention, but to tell the women of the North that they need to help the women of the South. She wrote it to educate those women, but unfortunately, the book really didn't become popular until long after slavery was abolished. My reflection, Jacobs may have struggled writing about the years she spent hidden in the shed and attic as she would have struggled keeping track of time, since most of the days would look the same. Her memories as a child were not specific as an adult, since as an adult you're more recent, And Jacob's identity was rooted in sacrificing years in her life in hiding in order to keep herself and her family safe. I learned through the process on this final project that life writing, it's not just for yourself, it's for informing your readers. Jacobs educated her readers to fight to abolish slavery. She shared the horrors she faced as an enslaved person. At the beginning of the text, there are letters written to Jacobs thanking her for writing the text. And one of them was a young lady who was trafficked. And she said, reading this, like, it was hard to read, but the relatability of it brought tears to her eyes. And she realized how similar it was and that she wasn't the only one out there. Future discussion. It was published in 1861. College curriculum still use this memoir. Um, Jacobs explains the toll women went through with slavery and the differences that men went through. Unfortunately, some people believe that her memoir was fiction. It was labeled as fiction for a while, but it's important that as readers, we give this incredible memoir the widespread attention that it deserves and continues to receive. Thank you for watching my presentation, and I hope you go out and buy Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl by Harriet Jacobs.